Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we're going to do some small business COVID-19 relief updates. And the first thing I want to start with is this exciting news we received a few weeks ago from the Small Business Administration, where they, the SBA, along with the US Treasury Department, put out a rule that said if you have a PPP loan of $50,000 or less, you no longer have to worry about your FTEs or salary and wage reductions. They're not even going to consider those in the forgiveness of your application. As a matter of fact, the application itself, the 3508S, is now 2 pages long, and you just have to mention how many employees you had when you started and how many when you applied for forgiveness. But ultimately, that's not what's going to factor into your forgiveness. That form is going to take you all of 2 minutes. However, you need to know that you still have to provide documentation showing that you spent that money on qualified expenses. Now, I know you all listened to me early on and I said document, document, document. So that's easy. You've already got the documentation ready to go. Now, you also have to realize that some of the qualified expenses you could spend the PPP funds on weren't necessarily forgivable. And also, those of you who received the EIDL grant, remember the forgivability of the PPP is going to be reduced by the amount of the grant you received. So if you received a $5,000 EIDL grant, just know a minimum of $5,000 will be paid back on the PPP loan. But this is great news. It's super simplified. And we have been working with all of our clients because we are now waiting for the banks to catch up. Not all of them have caught up to the new application process yet. So again, kind of a sit and wait game, but this is fantastic news. Now, in terms of the taxability of the PPP forgiveness, now the government came out early on and said, hey, the amount of money that is forgiven for you will not be reportable income, meaning it doesn't need to show up on your tax return. But then the IRS came out with guidance that said, okay, you're not going to report that as income, but guess what? You now cannot report the expenses as tax deductible expenses. And I mean the expenses on which you spent those PPP funds. Now, it basically undermines the taxability of the PPP forgiveness. And I'm really, really hoping that the government comes out and says, oh, actually, we're going to reverse that. Honestly, it would have been just better off if they had made the PPP forgiveness reportable income. Then you would have set the expenses against it and it would have been zero-sum game. But I don't think they were thinking about that at the time. They're thinking about it now. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed. There hasn't been any movement on that, but we did just finish the presidential election. So I'm kind of hoping that the gears are going to start turning on that again. But right now, just know that those expenses are non-deductible expenses for the time being. I personally am watching and hoping that they change it by the March 15th deadline for corporate returns. But if they don't, I will absolutely be putting my clients on an extension and hope that those rules change. Which means it's going to extend tax season yet again, but just make sure that you are working with your tax preparers to make sure you have all the right information before moving forward. Because ultimately what might happen is you would file your return and then they change the rule and then you're amending it again. And of course, you're going to have to pay to get that amended. And really, nobody wants to spend extra money that they don't need to, especially these days. Now, people have been asking me very often whether or not there's going to be another wave of PPP funds. And the answer is, I don't know. There are whispers here and there. I think that the government will probably do something. I just don't know what that will look like. And then even if they do come out with another wave of PPP funds, I really don't know if people who have already received one will be able to apply again. That is a question I've received very often, and I just don't know. My gut reaction is probably not, but there you go. The other thing that people have been asking me is, should they wait to apply for PPP forgiveness? Because one of the things that has been floating around out there in the news is that potentially any loans of $150,000 or less will be automatically forgiven. Yes, I've heard the same rumors. It's been thrown around a lot by both professionals and the media and people in the government, but no rule, no law has been passed on that. Do we need to wait a little bit longer? Yes. However, you need to know that come around the February timeframe, that's when people are going to start to have to apply for forgiveness because their 10 months is going to be expiring around that time. So that's just one of those things we're just going to have to keep listening to. Another question that people ask me is whether or not they can still apply for an EIDL. And the last I checked, the answer is yes, you can still apply for an EIDL. Of course, it's hard to tell from when I record this video to when it is posted whether or not there are funds available to actually get you the loan. But logging on to the SBA.gov site isn't going to hurt you. It's going to take you like 2 minutes and figure out whether or not you can apply for those loans. So that's it for now, you guys. Of course, I'm always trying to keep track of everything. Make sure you are working with your tax preparers and your CPAs to make sure that you have everything situated for forgiveness, because we want to maximize that forgiveness to the best of your ability. But as always, I'm sitting here saying it's just a hurry up and wait game. So next time I hear something, I'll let you all know. I'll keep you updated. And in the meantime, you guys do your best. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.